Today on Meet the Top 100, we're talking to number 13, Ishita. I'm really excited about this one. Let's get started. Hi, Ishita. How you doing?
Hello. Hi.
So we've been talking for a few minutes, obviously. For the recording, this is just starting. But I wanted to get a little bit of information about you, where you are in life, what your steps are, what you're doing, what your next steps are for going to university, things like that. Let's just hear a little bit more about who is Ishita. Where are you from? You can start with that.
Okay. Hello. My name is Ishita Thakur. I am a 17-year-old aspiring astronaut from India. I recently graduated 12th grade and I'm on a gap year.
Pretty awesome. And actually, interestingly enough, you were telling me this earlier, but you're taking gap year a little bit differently than maybe when we think of gap year, or at least when I think of gap year, I think, oh, I'm going to travel or do something kind of fun or
vacation.
Try some things. But for you, it's a little different. What are you doing in this gap year?
I am preparing for an exam called JEE, which is basically the most important exam in India, which you have to give if you want an admission in a technical institute. So I'm preparing for that, and I'm trying other online courses about astronomy, space, and other languages like Russian.
Wow. And you told me this, but you're spending like 7 hours a day studying at least. It sounds like a pretty intense gap year.
Yes, 7 hours of studying a day.
All right, so we're going to go on to question 2 then.
Okay.
All right, so the next question that we have is, what is it that you do, like you're binging, or what are you watching on a daily basis? I tend to talk about Netflix or TV, but what do you watch? Do you have a YouTube channel, maybe science related, that you're interested in?
I watch many science YouTube channels, and there are 2 favorites. One of them is Simon Yacht, and the other is Physics Girl. They're pretty good YouTubers about science and stuff.
I'll put those ones right up here for people to look at. So I'll ask you to spell that out for me later. But that sounds actually interesting. And it's interesting that you asked, because recently I started watching Isaac Arthur's Science and Futurism YouTube channel.
Futurism, right? Yeah.
Really
that is
cool.
Pretty cool. Really cool, yes.
Yeah, he goes into a lot into science related things, but it's also like really futuristic, and it feels kind of like a mix between sci-fi and science, like real science.
Yes,
it's actually really
which makes it a lot interesting.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, awesome. So now we're going to switch to talking a little bit more about the Navigator app specifically.
Okay.
So my first question here is, when did you first start playing the Space Nation Navigator app?
I first started, I got to know about this app in September 2017 when it wasn't yet developed. And I registered for a beta testing, and I started playing the moment it got out. And I have been playing it since then.
Awesome. So Danny was similar. She was in the beta testing. I think she started in February. But yeah, that's pretty awesome. You guys have been in since the inception, which is way sooner than me. But that's awesome. And when and the follow-up question to that is, you're in the top. I think you're in top 11. I think I might be just a move ahead of you.
I am 13. I am 13 right now.
Okay. So we're right there in that top category. But one thing I think that I find interesting is, why do you spend so much time in the app? Because I spend a lot of time in the app, and I get to talk about that regularly. But why do you spend so much time? What makes it so exciting or interesting that you want to spend that much time in the app?
The thing about the app is that you get to learn so many things that you would not get to know on camera or any documentary. If you see, I mean, there are a lot of articles about the space station, the training of astronauts, but you don't understand a lot of stuff you see and read. But after playing this app, doing quizzes and stuff, I got to know what really happens behind the camera. and that really happened. That really helps a lot.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It takes a lot of the things they do, they kind of turn things hand on, you know? So
Yes,
before it might just be the quizzes, give you a lot of information, which is awesome, but some of the games turn it into hands on, actually doing it. So maybe paper planes, a lot of
yes,
potential and kinetic energy, and you can see how that works in a fun way of doing that, or micro,
in a fun way. Yes.
right? Totally, totally agree with you on that. Something I hadn't thought of, but I'm glad you brought that up because turning the physics or whatever the science is and turning it into hands on is actually a lot more interesting than it sounds when you're trying to explain it.
Yes, because when you read about it, you get distracted or you get bored when you read it. But when you're playing it, it's like you have to concentrate and you feel a lot good when you do it yourself.
Exactly. Oh man, yeah. So I'm glad you brought that up because it's something I hadn't. But it's interesting to actually hear it
Yeah,
put into words, right?
yeah, you subconsciously know that, but you don't know. It's not on your tongue.
Yeah, and I'm glad
That's
Space Nation figured that out. That turning it into a game actually doesn't sound that interesting when you say it out loud, but when you're actually playing it, it does make the space physics aspects, the science aspects, it makes them a lot more interesting. So I'm glad you brought that up. So, what is your least favorite and your most favorite missions in the app?
the most favorite. If you count points, then obviously it has to be lunch anyone. But if you don't consider points, it has to be the quizzes and paper plane. And my least favorite mission is docking the ISS, habitat survival, and landing because those three missions don't actually work on my phone, and I have to go and take my mom's or my dad's phone to play it.
Oh, well, so it's kind of an extra hassle. Huh? Oh, I get that, and
Yeah,
it's interesting they brought a paper plane because as a favorite because Yvonne hates that one, and I actually find it quite challenging. So my question is, how far have you gotten the plane to go? The longest you think you've been able to get it to go?
I have gone 220 meter or something.
Oh wow! So like I think the longest I've ever gotten is 150 or 160. So that's actually pretty far, and it's not that easy. It's not like the normal paper
It's
plane
not
games you played
easy.
before, where
It's not easy
it,
because when I first started playing, I couldn't even cross the 30-meter border line.
yeah,
So
exactly.
it's
Same here.
pretty.
It kept crashing right away. So it does take
Yeah.
some getting used to. Um, Another interesting question I have is when you're doing quizzes, I actually find that quizzes can produce quite a bit of points if you can do them quickly.
Yes.
How many points are you generally getting on a quiz when you're getting a lot of kind of get into the rhythm?
Since I've been playing for a long time, I know what I don't have to read the whole question and the answers, and I know what I have to press. So I get mostly I get full marks, and the most I have gotten is 17.
Yeah, same here. And the only
17
time,
bonus points.
yeah, the only time I can get 17 is when one of the photos. It's one of the photo
Yeah,
ones.
the photos are not there. Yeah,
Slowly, they
yeah,
take too long, and you're able to answer before the photo even loads, which means
yeah,
they give you extra points, right?
yes.
But generally, on a
But it,
consistent basis, I can get around 15 because I'm doing exactly what
yeah,
you're doing.
15.
You basically know
15.
because you've done it so many times. You know it's just by the answers. You don't even almost have to read the question at all. It's
Yeah,
a quick glance, and then
you don't have to read it. You just I just see once and I know that yeah, this is the one. This is the answer.
exactly. But it is fun because what I think will happen. I haven't gotten this for sure from Space Nation, but I think they're going to be adding a lot more quizzes once they release the actual contest going live in August. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot more
Obviously.
questions. So it'll be a lot harder to do what we're doing now. But
Yeah.
even so, it's good to kind of get that ingrained in your mind. The repetition is what makes it one of those things where you can just repeat it.
Yeah.
So we just touched on this, but what is the most interesting thing you feel like you have learned as a result of these missions? And generally, when I ask that question, I like to focus on things that we have learned that will somehow relate to our real life in some way. So what is the thing that you have learned in space station that you feel like you're doing, you're actually using on a regular basis in your daily life?
On a regular basis, I think the cultural awareness and the survival training that they have on the quizzes, that is quite useful in everyday life.
Yeah,
For
that's
me, that is quite useful in everyday life.
right. It's very practical.
Yeah, just in case something happens. Just in case something happens, you want to be prepared for anything you can do.
That's a really good. I hadn't thought about that, and I know it's one of those things
Yeah,
that it's good to know, but you don't really think about using it
yeah,
because oh, we'll never need it. But that is actually really
yeah.
interesting. A really interesting take is just being able to survive in the wilderness if needed, at least because you have the knowledge to not do the wrong
Yeah.
thing, right? All right, so that's I like that take on that, and so one of the next questions that we generally ask is, what do you feel like? And this is a little bit more stepped away from the app, a little bit more about general
Okay.
interest in space and space exploration. But what are the things that you feel like for space exploration or potentially going to space that would be the most exciting aspect of that for you? But then also the most intimidating. So the two sides of that coin. You're going to space. What's that thing that's going to make you really excited about doing that? And what's the thing that's going to make you really a little nervous about
The launch, it is going to be very intimidating because even if there is 0.1% chance that you did something wrong, everything could go wrong from that point. So that point, the starting point, that is quite intimidating and scary. And the most exciting thing about space exploration is getting to do stuff in microgravity.
That's true. Touching on your first point of what's the most intimidating, you have to think that in the back of your mind, if you're sitting on a launch pad, you're thinking, I am sitting on, tons of very explosive material right now. That's
Yes.
that's intimidating. Like,
Explosive and costly.
yeah,
Yes.
exactly. So I haven't really put myself in that moment because I don't think I really want to think about it until it's actually happening. But that is a good point, and you're right. The most exciting aspect when you're talking about doing potential experiments or something in space, it's a whole different level. Like experiencing the ability to you know do flips or whatever with microgravity. That's really
Yeah.
interesting, and that's probably going to be one of the most you know biggest differences from just being in space. Right away, you'll see that right away. It's not like we're going
Yes.
to be in Mars tomorrow, right? So being able to
Yeah.
experience microgravity will be that huge thing that would happen, or right off the bat, it will just be so different to us. Which brings up a question that's not. I don't normally ask this, but do you have any ideas for an experiment that you think would be interesting to run, like something you're interested in because of the microgravity, or something you just want to try? It doesn't have to be an experiment. It could just be something simple.
I have a lot of ideas, but those ideas are not quite possible with the technology we have today, like creating a black hole or engaging in a warp drive experiment,
Okay, so
like the stuff you see
the big
in
thing.
sci-fi.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. You just want to create a warp drive. That's it. Not you're not a big thinker at all, right? No, that's actually really good. That's interesting. I think I'm interested in some of the diet stuff that happens in relation to space. We talk about one of the things that they talk about as being really important is being able to get a lot of nutrients in a small amount of space, right? So what are the like playing around with diets that you can make yourself get more energy from smaller things? I think that's interesting, and how that interacts with microgravity. What does that mean? I don't know. There's a lot of interesting stuff up there that you could.
That is pretty cool. That is
Yeah.
pretty cool. I do hope they get to do those stuff.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Okay, so the final question, I like to end on this note because it's a lot more about the community of all of us
Okay.
competing on Space Nation. But on the leaderboard today, there's thousands of people, but
Yeah.
generally we only see the top 10 on a weekly basis,
Yeah.
or maybe the top 20 or 30, depending on where you are. Is there some name that's popped up on the leaderboard that's someone that you really want to meet in person? Like you want to compete against them in real astronaut training because you find them really intriguing or inspiring?
I mean, when you think about that, it has to be the number one guy, Ivan.
Yeah.
But there are a few other people that I want to meet from Space Nation. Danny, obviously, you, and I don't know how to pronounce the name. Jelena?
Potentially. I need to ask her that in person, actually. I've always called her
Okay.
Helena, but that's because I know how to pronounce Spanish names better, and that's how you would pronounce it in
Yeah.
Spanish. uh,
Yeah.
I tend to assume if it's not in English, I just say it in Spanish, and it's not right. That's my brain because I default to whatever I know, right?
Yeah.
But yes, and
It's
that's a
fine.
community of people that has grown kind of organically within the social realm, and there's a lot of people that
Yes.
are not so engaged in some of the social channels, i.e., Twitter or Instagram, but they are
Yes.
they are out there all the time. I think Daniel
Yeah.
Rocco. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name right,
Yes.
but he's one that's always up there, and I'd be interested in meeting him. Yeah, that's really cool, and I think that the community aspect is probably the most interesting and important aspect of Space Nation.
Yeah, that is important because when you go to space, you're not there out alone. You have to be surrounded with people. So it's a good thing that you interact with people and get to know what others are like, what people from other parts of the world are like. It kind of gives you an edge about space exploration.
Yeah, and I think it's a very nice antithesis to what's happening in our world today, Earthside, where everyone's kind of holding up in their own, nations. And I like that Space Nation is kind of a place where people across borders all over the place. So far I haven't talked to anyone from the same country yet. You know what I mean? We're all in different countries. And that's really interesting to have because all those cultures come together. And while there's going to be things that annoy us about other people's cultures, that's always the case, there's going to be so many more things that we can find as common ground and create something much more beautiful and much more holistic because we all bring a different piece to the table.
Exactly my point.
Yeah, and that's
Exactly my point.
I think that's pretty amazing, and I'm glad that you're on the same page. I've seen some of your tweets about that. It's really cool to see that someone who's your age, because you're younger, right? You're going
Yeah.
to be able. I think someone with your age and who has your ambition is going to be able to help create a little bit of hope for our future, versus maybe some of the stuff
Thank
where
you.
everyone is worried about the future being terrible because of where things are looking like today. So I'm glad that you're part of Space Nation, and I'm glad that you're going to be one of those people pushing us in the right direction, I believe, in the future. So
Thank
bravo.
you so much. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. So that's all of my questions, but do you have anything else you want to talk about? Do you want to promote one of your social channels? I don't know, it's totally up to you. Is there anything you can ask me a question? Totally up to you.
Okay. So, what subject did you do your undergraduate degree in?
Great question. I did marketing and finance. I did both. So I am a
Oh,
business person
so
through and through normally, and that's
well, totally different path you're taking right now.
yeah, totally different. I am not. I have always been someone who was interested in sciences. Doing physics when I was in high school, I was good at it, and I enjoyed those things. I don't know. I'm probably practical when it comes to getting a degree. I just wanted to get something I knew I could get a really strong job in. But the reality is, I think I was suppressing my childhood dreams of space and things like that from a very early age because it was just so hard to achieve.
Yeah, the thing is, a lot of people around the world, they don't want to accept what they really want from their life. There is no worse thing than failing to do the thing that you're most passionate about. So
Yeah.
there are a lot of brilliant students I have seen that they choose a completely different path because they are scared of the outcome.
Exactly, and that's something that is, being afraid of failure is something that's taken me a long time to try and make less of a problem in my life. But at the same time, I think what Space Nation's doing kind of reawoke that inner child that was excited about going to the stars, because what they're doing is they're democratizing space, or that's their attempt, and they are creating a lot more of an open space concept. Whereas there was this general sense of elitism.
Yes.
If you weren't a super intelligent scientist, one of the 1% of people that were capable of being an astronaut, then there was no chance. So I do like that Space Nation, what they're doing,
Yeah,
reawaken that passion inside of you, I think.
that is quite true. That is the thing I like the most about Space Nation.
Yeah, it's very inspiring, and I'm glad that they're doing it, and that their goal is to, what their goal is to democratize space. I'm really glad they're doing that. Makes me happy. I know personally, since finding out about that, my inner child, my inner wonder with outer space, with the solar system, with beyond, all of that has been reawakened, because now I'm not so worried about earthbound concerns. I can think more to the stars, because they have reawakened the hope that we all can get there, and I'm really glad for that. I mean, that is something that is really inspiring.
Because the thing is that in countries like my country, there are like negligible amount of opportunities for you to become an astronaut, and the only way you can become an astronaut is to have a citizenship in US or go to Europe and train to become their astronaut. And both of those things are very difficult, and you cannot possibly determine at what point you're going to get eliminated, and all of the things that you did, your hard work, is just going to be just water on the bridge.
Yeah, exactly. And no one really wants to waste a chunk of their life, or feel like they've wasted a chunk of their life training for something that's an impossibility.
Yes.
So I do think that's why I think it's so important for Space Nation to be doing what they're doing, because they are awakening a passion where there's a lot of people who have this passion that aren't from historically, important fields for space exploration, whether that be, athletics, or Yvonne is much more of an athletic mind. He does some finance stuff as well. Those are things that aren't like, oh, we need the financiers for space exploration, or we need athletes for space. No. So in the past, that used to be, I can't be used, I'm not going to do this. And now it's opening up to a lot more possibilities. And I think a lot of people are excited about that, including you and I. So thank you for taking this time. Oops, I dropped my pen. Let's do that again. Thank you for taking this time to chat with me and answer my questions.
Thank you for asking me to do that.
That was a lot of fun for me. I hope it was for you as well. You can follow Ishita on Twitter, subscribe to her YouTube channel, where she will be uploading videos soon. But don't forget to like, share, and subscribe down here. And as always, keep ranking up your points. And I will see you guys at Space Camp in Iceland.